to all esteemed delegates, dignitaries, and faculty members of this event. I, Dr. Prakhar Vishit, President of Biochemistry, SPMC Bikaner, warmly welcomes you all to this Biochemistry Updates 2025 National Level CME at Sardar Patel Medical College, Bikaner, Rajasthan, under the aegis of MB. In the field of biochemistry, we have so many updates like automation in lab, artificial intelligence use, and many others, which has been used and in process. It must be for all of us to get ourselves updated for these latest ventures. Now, with the blessings of Almighty, we will now begin our session with the first session. I would like to invite our honorable chairpersons, Dr. S.K. Meena sir, Principal Government Medical College, Sirohi. Dr. Jitendra Ahuja sir, Senior Professor and Additional Principal, RUHS CMS Jaipur. Dr. K.M. Lodha sir, HOD Biochemistry, GMC Jhalawar. Dr. Sangeeta Khalia ma'am, Associate Professor, SMS Medical College, Jaipur. Now I invite our first guest speaker, Dr. Akila Prashant ma'am. Dr. Prashant ma'am, MBBS MD, PhD, PGD IP, Genomic Medicine, Professor and Head of Biochemistry, Convener of Medical Genetics and Directory of Laboratory Services at JSS Medical College and Hospital, Mysore. She is an expert in molecular biology and genetics of rare disorders. She has secured major grants from ICMR, VGST, SERB, DST, and DBT, and established advanced genetic facilities, including newborn screening, genome sequencing, and clinical cytogenetics. She leads the ICMR Collaborating Center of Excellence, serves as editor-in-chief of the Biochemistry, and has over 100 index publications. A recipient of several prestigious awards, including the Professor Y.T. Thajachari for Endowment Prize and MB Fellowship. She has pioneered innovative teaching methods and initiated BSc Honors, Medical Genetics and Counseling, and MSc Integrated Programs. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hello.
Yes,
I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is visible. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Is it in the slideshow?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So good morning, everyone, and I thank Dr. Anita ma'am and her team for giving me this opportunity for sharing how to write and publish the research paper. So this is very important because for academic as well as if you want to progress in your research career also, publishing and having a research paper is very important. So the overview of the talk would be this way. I will first talk about how to select research work, how to identify the gap in the literature and how we select a problem statement. And then once we work on that topic, how we structure the manuscript and what aspects we have to keep in mind while writing through the manuscript. That is how we excel in our writing process. How we select a journal, what aspects we look into while selecting a journal. And when going through the peer review process, how we effectively respond to the reviewer's comments, and then certain ethical and practical considerations which we have to take care while publishing our articles. So why we do a research, a core impactful research should be something novel, and it should be relevant to the scientific community. So it may be some complete new discovery, but it can also be an extension of some new context or already done work, some extension in a different population, a different setting, or a different method. New application of the existing concepts or techniques. So if something is existing, you're doing some, you're exploring a new application for it. So something a little bit novelty should be present in our research work, and how it is relevant, like how, whether it will advance the scientific understanding, whether it will improve the patient care or public health, or it will help in some policy or social change, or it will um, um, drive a new technology or technological innovations. So these are some of the impactfulness we would look for forward in our research work. So to maximize our research impact, we generally ask two things, like who would benefit and how the advanced knowledge would help. So while solving any problem, just ask for yourself whether which specific group would benefit from your research work and how it will advance your field of clinical practice or the laboratory medicine, what we perform in the day-to-day activities. And does this work contribute to a new insights or new methodologies in our own discipline? So these are some things, like suppose if we are generally looking at research question, which I'll be discussing a little later. So instead of framing it in a very simple way, like for example, vitamin D levels in type 2 diabetes, we can bring in some novelty in that, some advancement in that, by looking into the epigenetic modulations which this vitamin D would bring in after you give it as a supplement to the patient. So it can be like something like epigenetic modulation of the antioxidant genes by vitamin D in the type 2 diabetes population. So that way you can bring in some kind of novelty in the study process. Also, when we are thinking of a research problem or a research question, it should align with certain things, like for example, institutional priorities. What your institution is working on, what is expertise available in your institution, what is the infrastructure available in your institution. So we can look into that aspect first. Also, then we can look into the funding agencies' interest. What are their trust areas? So what would, for example, if ICMR has given a call for proposal, or other agencies like DST, SCRB, or ANRF giving a call for proposal. So that would tell us that this is the interest of the funding agency. So we can align our research towards that. And then what are the gaps in the literature? What is that which is not yet known? So identify the unaddressed questions, contradictions, and underdeveloped areas where existing research to establish the novelty and necessity of the study is important. So this way we can align our research with the key drivers. So these key drivers could be, as I mentioned, the institutional priorities, funding agency interest, the current gaps in literature. So for example, leveraging the institutional strength. So we can see maximize the feasibility and the resources available in the institution. So if an ongoing project is already going on in the institution, we can align our research to that project and then utilize the infrastructure developed under that project. And also when we align it to the institutional strengths, then you can get a lot of support from the management also. For example, like in our institution, we already had the newborn screening facility. So we focused some of our research activities to that, like for example, validating the specific region specific cutoffs for all the parameters, which is done in the newborn screening. So that way we utilize the facility in the institution and brought up this concept, and we have published this work also. So that's how I'm telling how we identify the problem, and then you work on that, and that becomes easier for us to publish. So aligning with the funding agencies, as I mentioned, ICMR, DBT, DST, SCRB. So these are, they give regular call for proposals. For example, there will be call for proposals from maternal and child health division of the ICMR. And we can if we are also working in some aspects of this, at that time we can develop a project, like for example, developing a low-cost portable diagnostic tool for common pregnancy complications in remote villages, and the locally resourced materials can be used to develop this, and this will definitely be of interest for ICMR. So that way we can align our research work so that it gets easily published, because we are talking about the manuscript preparation publication. But to start with, we need to have a good research work. So how we identify the problem and develop the research is very important for us to later on publish it. So again, similarly, identifying the gaps in the literature. So we have to do a proper literature survey, use databases like Scopus, PubMed, Google Scholar to identify the research gap, look for studies which have contradictory findings and which have not been resolved by debates. So we can work on those aspects. And if a study has been done in one population, we can also replicate that study in another population to see if the results or the findings would be the similar way. And if you feel that the study has not, it has some methodological weakness, for example, the sample size or the method which they have used was not proper, or you're not satisfied with that, you can use a bigger sample size and another different method to validate those findings. So these things would help us. And suppose if while reading through the literature, a recent systematic review or meta-analysis, this can quickly help us identify the research gaps and future directions for research. So this way we can first identify the problem to work on. And always define the research question based on the PICO format. So this is very important. So PICO, I'm sure most of you would be aware of it. So that is, P stands for population or a problem, who you are studying. For example, it's adult patients with type 2 diabetes or children with autism or health professionals. So the population has to be defined. And what are you doing, like intervention, or you're seeing the exposure. So what are you introducing or testing? So is it a new drug, or is it a specific therapy, educational program, environmental factor? And to whom are you comparing it with? So C is for comparator. So the who would be the baseline. So with a placebo or no intervention group or another exposure or a standard treatment. So where are you going to compare them? Healthy controls. What outcome would you see for? So what are you measuring or hoping to achieve? So is it the reduction of the symptoms, improved quality of life? So diagnostic accuracy or disease progression. So your research question should have all these components, the PICO, that is population, intervention, comparator, and the outcome. So for example, if you given an example here, so if a population is a South Indian population who are adults with obesity, and what you're looking for or what are you testing in them is, for example, a PPR gamma methylation levels. And who are you comparing it with? You're comparing them with non-obese controls. And what outcome you're looking for is association of insulin resistance index. So how you would frame the research question based on the spike, the information what you have. It's like, is in the South Indian adults with obesity, is there an association between PPR gamma levels and insulin resistance index compared with non-obese controls? So this is how you will ensure that all the PICO components are incorporated in your research question. Okay, so this helps again because you will be able to frame the objectives and then write the methodology accordingly, because once your research question is defined well, the rest of the work becomes easier. So once you have a research question, then you define your research objectives. Research objectives and the hypothesis is the next thing which becomes important. Research objectives, for that you can follow the SMART format. SMART is specific, clearly state what you intend to do. So it has to be very specific. It should be measurable. So ensure that the success of the objective can be quantitatively or qualitatively assessed. Okay, so it should be measurable. achievable, that is with the amount of resources, time, and your capabilities, it is realistic and you will be able to achieve this objective. And it should be relevant, that is why it is important. So objective should align with the overall research question. So it should contribute meaningfully to the field, and it should be time bound. So in the span of, for example, if it is a small short-term project, then in a span of 6 months, you should be able to finish it. Or if it is a major project, in a span of 3 years, you have to be able to finish this work. So your objectives should be such that it should be SMART, that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And sometimes you can have the primary and the secondary objectives, but not always necessary. You can have 3 major objectives in the study, or some people find it a little more relevant to have the main objective and some secondary objectives. Okay, so the primary objective is a single most important aim of the study, which directly addresses the research question. So for example, in the research question which we made in the previous slide. So the primary objective, if we have to design, because this is a study which we have conducted in our own institution. So I've taken this example throughout my presentation. So to determine the association between SOX3 methylation and insulin resistance in the South Indian adults. So this is the research question was whether there is any changes in the methylation status of the PPR gamma and the SOX3 genes. These were 2 genes which we had studied. So the primary objective can be whether there is an association between the SOX3 methylation and the insulin resistance in the South Indian population. And your secondary objectives, you can have something which is indirectly related to your research question. So for example, correlate the methylation status with the inflammatory markers, or age or the sex of the individual. So that way you can have several secondary objectives. Okay. And a research hypothesis, we know that there are 2 things which you usually talk about: the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis. So always a null hypothesis states that there is no significant difference or no association between the variables which are studied. Okay, for example, there is no significant association between the SOX3 methylation and insulin resistance in the Indian population. But an alternative hypothesis says that there is a significant association. So we have to keep in mind about these hypotheses, what hypothesis we start our work with. So framing the clear objectives and testable hypothesis early in the study duration, which will ensure that our study design, data collection, and analysis all stay aligned and they lead to a robust and interpretable results. So just with that brief introduction of how to look in for, or how to look for a research problem. Now I'll come to the manuscript preparation, how we have to start with the manuscript preparation. Once you have your research question, objective, hypothesis, and you've established a robust research work, you've identified the gaps, you have the funding available. So now you have completed your research work, and in order to disseminate the results of your study, you need to publish your article. So this article, what you publish, should be well-structured manuscript. So usually the manuscript structure, it's in the IMRAD format, okay, or a model. So this is standard for most of the journals. So what this stands for is, you have the introduction. I stands for introduction. So introduction sets the stage. It introduces the research problem and outlines the study purpose and objective. So it is like a setting of the stage. You introduce the problem to the readers. Next, in the end, towards the end of the introduction, you have to mention your objectives also, because you're mentioning your research, the research gap, and then finally what objectives which you would do in this, you have done in this research work that addresses or helps you to solve the gaps in the literature. Okay, so that's how your introduction goes on. I will again deal with that in detail. So method, it describes in detail how the study was conducted, so that if anybody wants to replicate the study, they can follow your methodology and they can replicate the study and validate the findings of your results. Okay. In the results, we present the findings in the form of maybe tables, figures, or a descriptive text. And in discussion, we interpret the results. I mean, we should not be repeating the results and discussion. I'll be again mentioning that in detail later. So it is we interpret the results, explain its significance, and how it is related to the existing literature, and how our findings are similar, or it contradicts what is available in the literature. Okay, so this is the usual format which is followed. Apart from this introduction, methods, results, and discussion, we have to focus on the title and the abstract as well. So title, why it is important? Because it is a first impression of your research, because anybody who was searching for your, I mean, in general, looking for articles, they first look into the title. Okay. Is a title relevant to their study, or is a title something which is interesting and they feel like reading further? Okay. So also for the indexing agencies and other things, it is important to have the keywords mentioned in the title, because it helps in uh, bringing up your article when somebody searches for related research work. Okay, so usually title should be specific and concise. Aim for like 12 to 15 words, and clearly define the scope of the study in the title. As I mentioned, include the keywords, incorporate relevant, I mean, this introducing the keywords in the title will be relevant for indexing and search engine optimization, and to aid discovery. Avoid jargons, like, I mean, you can use clear and simple words instead of using obscure phrases or something like. Instead of using that and overly doing it in a complicated way, you can have clearly mentioned the title and avoid the jargons. Prioritize clarity, ensure the title is easily understandable and informative, and you know it should be simple, and it should bring out the essence of your study there. So for example, if you can see here, the poor title, like for example, study of genes in obesity would be a very poor title. Instead of that, DNA methylation of PPR gamma and SOX3 gene in relation to insulin resistance in South Indian adults, that would be a better title. Okay, so that clearly tells you what you were doing in that study. The previous one title, study of genes in obesity, does not make the reader understand which genes were studied, and I mean, what aspect of that genes were studied. So here you know that there are two genes which were studied, and it is a DNA methylation pattern which was studied in those two genes, and it was compared with the insulin resistance. Okay, so that way the title should be very specific, concise, not too long, uh, and as far as possible, see that the keywords are mentioned in the title. So abstract, again, the most of the journals ask for a structured abstract, so which has a background with the aim, methods in brief, results, the most important key findings of your article can be mentioned in the results, and the conclusion, the main takeaway of your study and its implications. So ensure it is directly supported by the results, and it should not be over-interpreted. So usually most of the journals, they look in for an structured abstract, but always you have to go through the instructions to authors, again, which I'll be coming with later, before you prepare the manuscript, because some of the journals would ask for an unstructured abstract. Some of the journals also ask for graphical abstract. This is something which is seen in most of the international journals, where they ask for a graphical abstract. So you have to graphically represent the entire gist of the study. So that way, to align with the journal's requirements, we have to first go through the instructions to all this. But by and large, most of the journals have the structured abstract format. So in the background and the aims, you briefly introduce the research problem and specify the objectives of the study. What question did your research seek to answer in this particular study? And in brief methodology, you can describe the study design, settings, and participants, and what measures or interventions were used in the study. Results very briefly about the key findings, what was very significantly noticed in the study, and also the conclusion, which is the main takeaway from the study, and ensure that the results are not over-interpreted in the conclusion. So usually the abstract is the elevator pitch, because as I mentioned, when readers are looking for articles, they look for the title, they find the title interesting, they first read the abstract. Okay, so if abstract, they feel it is well crafted abstract, then they feel like reading the entire research work. So the abstract is something which, brings out the entire essence of the paper or the research work, what you have done. So in the introduction, what things which we have to concentrate while we write an introduction. So it is called as a funnel approach. In the sense, first we start with a broad context, okay, like a funnel, the wide mouth of the funnel. So that is, we start with a broad context, establish the global or the clinical significance of your research, highlighting the overall problem or importance. So it will be in a broader context. Then we narrow down a little. What are the known facts? We summarize the existing research and established knowledge, and concisely present whatever is known in that field. Okay. And then we narrow down further by identifying the gaps in the knowledge. So we clearly articulate what is unknown, unresolved, or missing in the current literature, and how our study would address this missing knowledge. Okay, so that has to come in the introduction. And finally, we conclude the introduction by stating our study's primary purpose or research question or the testable hypothesis. So this is how the introduction should be written. So you have to first start with a broad context, okay, overall significance of this research area, then come down to the known facts, write about what is already known, already done in the in this field, and then identify this gap in the knowledge, what is unresolved, what is missing, and how our study would address this missing knowledge, and then clearly state our study's objectives or the research question or the hypothesis. So for example, now in the previous study which we were talking about, how we would use this funnel approach. So for example, first we would talk about obesity, insulin resistance are increasing globally, and it's posing a significant public health challenge. So we talk about that. And then we also talk about the existing research highlights how the epigenetic mechanisms, particularly DNA methylation, play a crucial role in influencing most of the metabolic pathways. So what is a gap there? Then there are very few studies who have specifically explored these mechanisms in the South Indian or the Indian population, who poses a distinct genetic and dietary profile, because our genetic profile is not that same as the other regions, and the dietary profile also is unique. So that way, probably studying it in this population also becomes important. So that way we address that. Yeah. So finally, we say that the study's aim is to investigate the methylation patterns in these two genes and see its relation with insulin resistance. So that is how we design the introduction, so that we follow a funnel approach. So from the broad aspect, come down to the study aim. So most of the times when we see the articles, yeah.
Ludra sir,
most
please
of
unmute yourself. Mute yourself.
Yeah, most of the times when we see the articles submitted to our own journal, we find that the introduction does not end with the objective. It becomes very important when you write the introduction. You have to mention the global aspects, then the existing research which has been conducted, what is a gap in literature, and how your study would address it with the proper objectives or the hypothesis of the study. So it should end like that. Otherwise, the introduction becomes incomplete. Next, coming to the methods. The method section is again a detailed blueprint of how your study was conducted, so that it allows the researchers to replicate the work, and they can also validate the findings of the study. So it has to be totally transparent. Yeah, so it first you have to mention the study design, whether it was a cross-sectional randomized control study. So clearly mention what type of study design you had chosen, and then what participants or what location the study was performed. So whether it was what were the inclusion criteria, what were the exclusion criteria. So these things have to be again mentioned clearly. Ethical approval has to be mentioned, because if we are performing all the studies on the human population, this is also becomes very important. And sample size justification should be mentioned. This also becomes very important. If you have included these many numbers of individuals, what is the justification for that? So all these components should be mentioned in the methods section. Along with that, how the data was collected and what measurements were done. So what were the kits used, equipments used. You can also mention about the manufacturer also. That also gives an authentication for the work what we have done. And the standard procedure for sample collection processing. So all these things could be mentioned in the results. What were the variables which were tested, whether there were covariates also available, what is the primary outcome, what was the secondary outcome, and like specify how the variables was measured, and so that this ambiguity can be avoided when people want to do or reproduce the same study in another population. So, and the most important thing is the statistical analysis. We have to mention the software which was used for statistical analysis, what significance level was chosen, and every specific statistical test employed for each analysis. Justify the choice, why you have chosen that particular test, and whatever test you have chosen, you have to justify that choice. So it should be aligned with the research objectives and the research question what you're asking for. So this itself is a bigger topic, so I have not dealt much with that, but it is important that all of us know the statistical analysis and what softwares can be used and what different tests can be used in which context. And again, the methods have been previously published. We have to cite the source and explicitly state that any modifications made to the original protocol. So suppose if we have followed some others method, whether we have followed it exactly the same way or we have made some modifications in the original protocol, so that also has to be stated properly. So this ensures that entire transparency, and it helps others to replicate and build upon our work. So we should avoid vague statements like standard methods were used. So even if you mention that standard methods were used, we have to provide us citation there. Okay, a reference should be mentioned there. So which method did you refer, and did your particular methodology. So everything should be very transparent and detailed, so that there will be credibility for the work and others can also utilize the findings of our research. Okay, so this way the method section should be complete, and based on our objectives, all of that what was necessary to complete that objective or to meet the requirements of that objectives, all that have to be mentioned in our methods. So coming to the results, again, we have to present our findings. It should be very objectively presented so that it is clear and people can understand our results very well. We have to avoid interpretation here. In the results section, we have to just mention what is observed in our study, what findings we have got. So avoid interpretation or discussion in the results section. So the primary purpose of the results to clearly and concisely show what we have discovered. Okay, so that we set a stage for the subsequent discussion section. So mention the results clearly. Avoid interpreting the results in the results section. Okay, so most of the times the visual depiction of the results would be better in the form of tables and figures. So utilize well-designed tables, figures, and this will make the complex numerical data little digestible and more impactful. So it's because numbers are difficult to digest, but if you see that in the form of a graph or a figure, it becomes more interpretive. And maintain the order and consistency. So present your findings in a logical sequence that mirrors the order of research questions or the method. So what objectives you, as per your objectives, so you write the methodology, and as per your methodology, you write your results. So it should go in that sequence. So don't jumble up your results. So go in a logical sequence as you have described your methodology. So it becomes easy for the readers to understand what you have written. Okay, and again, statistical data when you are presenting. So it would be good to present the exact p-values instead of just saying less than 0.001. So it would be better instead of that saying p-value is equal to 0.045. Okay. So rather than just saying significant and non-significant, please mention the p-value so that your results are fully, it provides full transparency for the readers to evaluate whatever work you have done. And avoid data dumping. Relevant data can only be highlighted in the results. Other data can be, if you feel that you have done some more things but not very relevant to be put in the main manuscript, such data you can put in the supplementary material. Okay, so there is no restriction in the number of tables or anything in the supplementary material. So make full use of the supplementary section. Whichever you feel that is not very important to be mentioned in the main manuscript, such figures or tables or some methodological context can be put in the supplementary file. Okay, so that will prevent the data dumping into the results. But yes, of course, we should know that it's not only the significant results which are important. Even the non-significant results are also important. Some of the journals do accept papers where the results are not significant, because it would definitely avoid the duplication of the studies. And if people are planning to work on that aspect and they find this paper which says that it is not significant, then they may probably make some modifications to their study. So negative data is also important, but yeah, you have to present it very smartly, and we have to avoid the data dumping. Focus on key findings that contribute to answering the research question. Okay, so and also in the result section, instead of mentioning it in a detailed textual format, we can put most of them in the tabular format, and then in the text just mention that the details of or demographic details of the patients included in the study as shown in table 1. So that it makes it, the text becomes less complicated there. Next, coming to the discussion aspect. So here it is, here is where you interpret your findings. I told you that result section, you have to just mention the results, what has been obtained by you and avoid interpreting the results there. It is a discussion section where you interpret your findings. Okay, so here you explain what the significance of the results are, and here is the opportunity to explain why these results matter. Okay, so what is the importance of this result, why it is important, this. So first, how you begin your discussion is usually begin with a concise one paragraph summary of the most significant results. So that's how you have to begin the discussion, like begin with the one summary of the most significant results, reiterate the main takeaway without putting everything into the discussion again, just a small summary of the important or significant results. Then you start comparing your results with the existing literature. Okay, so integrate your findings with the previous research and discuss how your results support or contradict and how or expand upon the existing knowledge, and what explanations you can provide for any kind of discrepancies seen in your results when compared to the other studies. So here, first we start with a short summary, and then we compare our study with the existing literature. We have to also mention the strengths and limitations of the study. Okay, so acknowledge the strong points of your study. So what is that which is very, very unique in your study? So is it the robust methodology? Is it the large sample size? So those things, the strengths of your study has to be highlighted. And simultaneously, you have to also, once your strengths are highlighted, you also have to mention about the limitations of your study. Okay, so whether there are any kind of limitations, whether there is any kind of bias in your study, and how it would impact on the generalizability of your results. Okay, so that also has to be mentioned. And finally, end your discussion with implications and future research. Okay, so discuss the practical and theoretical implication of your findings for practice or policy or further studies. So suggest clear directions for subsequent research that emerge from your study. So we have to, on the whole, this will be the structure of the discussion. A key summary of the research findings, comparing with the existing literature, mentioning about the strengths of your study, limitations, and the implications and the future directions. Okay, so again, I would tell you that don't repeat your results in the discussion. So discussion should go beyond merely restating the results. So don't repeat the results here. You have to be focusing on the interpretation, the meaning of your results and their implications, how it would help the scientific community. Okay, so we have to avoid repeating the results in the discussion session. So that part we have to take. So once we have followed this format for the discussion, finally would be the conclusion. So conclusion here, it's a section which brings the research paper to a definitive close. Okay, so you have to summarize your findings here and leave the reader with a clear understanding of your study's ultimate message. Okay, so that is what the conclusion is. It should be very crisp and evidence-based. We have to reinforce the main message and provide recommendations, if any. Okay, so here we have to ensure that the conclusion is precise and directly supports the results which are presented. We should not conclude, overstated conclusion should not be there. Okay, so whatever is there directly related to our study, that is something to be concluded for. And the key findings have to be reiterated here. So we have to connect back to the research question or the hypothesis. No new data should be presented in the conclusion. It should be just directly related to what results we have got in our study. So if the findings strongly support a specific course of action or policy change or a future research direction, we can include this as a recommendation. Okay, so For example, if I have to say about our study, this a weak conclusion would be just to mention that the study is very important for for the future of medicine. So that becomes a weak statement. So something a better statement would be that methylation of PPR gamma and soxygen was significantly associated with the insulin resistance in this South Indian cohort, suggesting an epigenetic contribution to the metabolic dysregulation. So that way, we can conclude if we found a significant association between the methylation patterns and the insulin resistance. Okay, so that way, the conclusion is the closing statement in the study. And again, people usually read the abstract and then they sometimes come directly to the conclusion. Okay, so just to see that what has been the main findings of the study. So your conclusion statement also should be very strong. So this way, this IMRAD, what we have started, so we have to link it to the entire research journey. So as I mentioned, the introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So introduction is why the research was conducted, defining the problem, background, and objectives. Method is how the research was performed, detailing the experimental designs and the procedure. Results is what you found, and what data and key observations were there. And discussion, how you interpret your results, what are the implications of that, and how it can be used for future research work. So some of the tips which can be followed for the writing clarity and impact. Usually when we write a research paper, active voice should be used rather than the passive voice. Use active voice as far as possible. For example, we measured insulin levels using ELISA. Instead of mentioning serum insulin levels were measured using ELISA. So yeah, but of course, in all the places, active voice would not be possible. So we have to have a right balance between the active and the passive voice. So active voice usually improves the clarity, and complete avoidance of the passive voice may lead to repetitive sequences. So we cannot completely avoid passive voice. So there should be a blend of the use of active and the passive voice. But avoid using too much passive voice, because this makes the paper feel impersonal and harder to follow. So most of the journals would have given it in their instructions itself that use active voice. Okay. And short sentences, clear transitions. So don't keep the sentences very long. Okay, that again becomes difficult for the readers to follow. So see that most of the sentences are within 20 to 25 words. And if the sentences are too long, it would make the text difficult to follow, and complex scientific concepts may not be understandable easier. So break down this complex idea. So break it into several short sentences. So this improves the comprehension and allows the readers to process the information more easily. Okay. And it is good to use these transition words, for example, like furthermore, however, in contrast to, consequently. So these things would help you to connect two sentences or two paragraphs or two sections. So this it will smoothen off the flow of your narrative things when you're writing it in your discussion or introduction. So these transition words become very important. Okay, so here again an example is given where in the first one is a very long sentence, but then the same thing can be told by splitting the sentences into two. Okay, so that way it becomes easier for the reader to understand them. And as I mentioned earlier, avoid unnecessary jargons. Throughout the text, follow a simple language. Wherever you feel that the terms are a little technical, please define the terms and use the abbreviations consistently. I mean, some places you start the abbreviations, then again, somewhere in between you expand it, and then again abbreviations are used. So once you have used the abbreviations and mentioned what the abbreviation is about, throughout the text use only the abbreviations. Okay, so that way it becomes the uniformity can be followed in your entire manuscript. So avoid unnecessary jargons and ensure that all the terminologies are defined properly. Okay. So there should be consistent phrasing. Standard units should be used. Okay, either milligrams per deciliter or millimoles per liter. So use that throughout. Like suppose if you started with milligram per deciliter, use that throughout the this one. So adhere to the guide, strictly follow the journal specific guide for formatting the numbers, symbols, abbreviations, or statistical items, and including the punctuation, everything. So follow this style which has been mentioned by the journal. Okay. For example, if you see here, we have like what is to be avoided, like the patient's body mass index was recorded and the study showed a correlation with the activity levels and BMI. So once you have mentioned body mass index, then you're mentioning BMI. Okay. So instead of that, the patient's BMI was recorded. The study showed a correlation between the activity levels and the BMI. Okay. So that way you are consistently mentioning only the abbreviations. Of course, first time when you have introducing the BMI, then write the body mass index and in bracket BMI, but then consistently use only the abbreviation. So the second example, you can see the glucose has been first represented in milligrams per deciliter and then later in millimoles per deciliter. So that way it again creates some kind of confusion among the readers. So it's always better to report it throughout in one unit which you have started with. Okay. So common pitfalls to avoid: over claiming of the results. Okay, as I told you that over claiming, don't over claim, just mention what has been obtained from your study. Okay, so for example, like our biomarker can be used as universal screening tool for cancer. That may be over claiming. Okay, so instead of that, you can mention our biomarker shows potential for early cancer detection, but further validation in larger cohorts is needed. This is a little safer way to say you're not overclaiming your results here. And as I mentioned earlier, don't ignore the negative results. So negative findings are also important, but they should be presented in a very smart way and integrate them into your discussion and explain the possible reasons or study limitations or methodological issues to provide a complete picture and why you have got this negative results. Okay. So, and again, take critical feedback from your colleagues before submission. Have a trusted colleague or mentor critically review your manuscript for any instances of overclaiming or overlooked negative results. So, I mean, usually when you are alone seeing your paper, you may not find anything, overclaiming, or you would not register that a negative result has not been reported, but somebody else reads, they would pick it up. So it would become, you would get a good feedback if somebody else reads your article before you actually publish. So for main takeaway message for the authors, what you have to do. Always write as if your reader is smart but busy. So you have to keep the reader's perspective in mind when you are writing your article. So respect their time. So be concise, clear, and direct in your communication. Prefer clarity over complexity. So avoid unnecessarily convoluted sentences or jargons that can obscure the message. Purposeful sentences. So every sentence should either provide information or guide to the reader. So eliminate any filler words or phrases that do not contribute meaningfully to the message, and maintain accuracy. Never sacrifice accuracy for style or dramatic effect. So scientific integrity is something which is very important. So these are some things which you have to keep in mind while writing our article. So quickly about journal selection, I'll mention how you have to go about with the journal selection. First is the matching scope and audience. So whichever journal you choose, first go through their scope, whether your article fits to that scope. Okay, for example, if you're done a molecular biomarker study, most likely journals, what you can use is like Frontiers of Oncology, BMC Cancer, or Cancer Research. Okay, so for a biochemical assay validation, you cannot use these journals. Okay, for that the journals are different. So like clinical biochemistry, Indian Journal of Medical Biochemistry, or Journal of Clinical Chemistry. So these are, so first check whether you fit into the scope, because generally the articles are rejected if the articles do not fit into the scope. So check whether it fits into the scope. Also, it's a good habit to see the recent publications of that journal. Okay, just open the current issue or one backdated issue and see what type of articles this journal accepts. Okay, just look at their review articles, original articles, or case reports, what they have published in that. And what is the target readership of this journal? Who is the audience of this journal? Okay, so is it the biochemists are the audience, or is it that there's a wide audience of medical people, or is it a laboratory based journal? So you have to understand the journal's audience. Okay, so sometimes most common rejection reason is that the article does not fit into the scope. So next is check the indexing. Okay, once you've selected the journal, check the indexing, whether it is indexed in PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science. That becomes very important, because even for academic advancements now, for promotions and career progression, they ask for indexed articles published in indexed journals. Even the funding agencies look for the applicant's publication record in indexed journals. So again, there also it becomes important. Globally also, like when you try to collaborate with other universities in abroad and all, they look in for your publications and the indexing of that. And credibility and trust, because reputed journals, they have a strict peer review process, and that gives more credibility to your work, because every aspect of what you have done are checked by some 3 or 4 reviewers, so that a holistic feedback and corrections are done for the article. So it becomes very important to check the credibility of the journal before you're submitting. So a good way to search is the NLM catalog or the Scopus source list, journals listed under the Scopus. So there you get the full list of journals which are indexed by the respective indexing agencies. Impact factor and relevance, that is also important, because again, journals how good the journal is sometimes told by the impact factor, but not always. Better than impact factor is the H indexing of the journals, which you can look for. So here you can see, usually the readers read articles from a high impact journal. So that's why it's better to get published in a higher impact journal. Also check the acceptance and the turnaround time, how much time they take. Okay, so that also is given on the website. So acceptance rate of the journal also would be given on the website. How soon they give the first decision, how soon the published articles once accepted. All these aspects are given. The timelines are given usually on the website. So you can refer to that, so that if you want to publish, if you're not in a hurry, you can publish it in a journal, even if they are taking time. But suppose if you want the data to be published earlier, then you can look in for those timelines there. And predatory journals, please avoid them. Okay, it is very, very important with a lot of predatory journals. So you have to identify and avoid these predatory journals, because they usually exploit the authors for publication fees without providing a proper peer review or editorial services. Okay, so that is why it is, publishing in predatory journals would not help us in any way. So sometimes you get invitations, emails saying, promising rapid publication. So usually that will be from predatory journal. If the journals do not state their scope, aims and scopes, or they have an overly broad or ambiguous scope, then again that would be an predatory journals. If the editorial board is missing, or they just mentioned some dubious indexing claims. So again, such journals should be avoided. And when you see the website, the poor quality of the website itself with unprofessional design itself tells you that they are not a good journal. So to verify the authenticity, you can refer to the Directory of Open Access Journals, or COPE. The journal should be registered in these places for that to be authenticated journal. Otherwise, it is best to avoid these journals. For example, if any journal tells that they will be publishing your article in 5 days, then definitely it is a predatory journal. Don't publish in that. And as I mentioned earlier, instructions to authors of every journal. Each journal has its own instructions to authors. So every journal, please read the instructions very clearly. Their word count, abstract format, referencing style. It has to be followed as mentioned by them. And suppose if you have any kind of confusion, please refer to their recently published article. So how the recently published articles are there, please keep that same format. Okay. And everything, like even the figures, tables, ethical statement, supplementary, everything would have been mentioned, and you have to comply with all the necessary requirements which the journal has mentioned. Okay. So follow the submission checklist and see that all these aspects are taken care of before submitting the article, because you have to prepare. Even the references, for example, if they have mentioned, some journals mentioned Vancouver, some mention APA, some mention Harvard. So it should be as per the journal's instructions. Okay, so it is like this. First, check the scope of the journal, whether it your paper matches that scope. Verify the indexing, then avoid the red flags, avoid the predatory journals, and then confirm the instructions, follow the author's guidelines, and then submit your article to this. Okay, so your research, you have to find the right home for your research. Okay, so the right journal, because you have put all your efforts for your research, it has to go to a right place. So the best journal for your paper is the one where your target audience will find, read, and cite it. Okay, so that would be the highest impact of your research. It's not the impact factor as such, but it should be the place where that audience will read and cite it. Okay, so this is a core principle which empowers you to make a strategic publication decision, because whatever articles you have published, it should be cited by others. Okay, and during the peer review process, once you have submitted your article, it goes through the peer review. Reviewers are assigned. Then the editorial or the editor will collect the responses of the reviewers, and then he will prepare a feedback on that, whether his decision would be either accept, revise, or reject the article. Suppose if it is revised, then the authors, it is sent back to the authors, and the authors would revise based on the comments, make certain necessary changes, and then resubmit for the final decision. Okay, so view the reviewer's comment as a valuable opportunity to strengthen your research. Okay, so that it can be your research, and we can improve the clarity and the impact of our research. So always take the reviewers' comments as a valuable feedback. It should, and if at all you are reviewing some other articles, or you have got, always provide a positive feedback. It should not be that you're criticizing somebody's work. It sometimes paper might be good, manuscript might be good, or sometimes the manuscript may be bad, but the way we put in our comment should be such a way that it should give constructive feedback to the authors. Okay, so that they can improve it on their work the next time. So when you are responding to the reviewers' comments, see that you maintain the professionalism. Always keep in mind the reviewers are not your enemies. Okay, they are some collaborators helping you to improve your paper. Okay, so maintain the professionalism, maintain the politeness, constructive tone, and even if you disagree on the feedback of the reviewers, so we can mention it in a very polite way by giving proper references and background for that. Okay, so manage emotion. So avoid emotional responses. Don't immediately respond to the reviewers. Even if your paper is rejected, don't immediately respond. Take at least 24 hours, to digest and to think over, process the feedback, and then you draft your reply. Okay, so begin your response by always thanking the reviewers for their time and constructive input. Okay, because reviewers spend without any monetary benefits. Nobody pays for the reviewers. Okay, so they are spending their time looking through your study and giving feedback. So always first thank the reviewers for their time and constructive input, and brief statement on how their feedback improved the manuscript. So one or two sentences does not take much time. So that has to be usually a practice which we have to follow. And then point by point rebuttals have to be prepared. So they would have given list of major concerns what they have or something. So point by point for every comment, what your response is, and in which page number or line number you have made those changes, and where the changes are made, either make it with track by keeping the track changes on, or highlight the changes what you have made, because otherwise it makes it difficult for the reviewer to again go through your entire paper. Okay, because that is what difficulty we face in when we get the articles for IJMB also. So sometimes the revised manuscript is just sent like that without marking where the changes have been done. So again, the entire article has to be read for us to note where the changes have been made. So it's the best practice that you have a point by point rebuttal to the response of the reviewers. So what comment he has given, what is your response? You can make 3 columns, what comment, or and then what is your response, in which page number or line number you have made those changes, highlight that place where you have made the change. That makes it very easy for the reviewers. Okay, so for example, here I've given, so the reviewer comment is that the sample size appears small for a meaningful statistical analysis. So our response, how it should be: we appreciate this observation. So our sample size was determined using the priori power analysis of this software, which indicated 40 participants per group would provide 80% power to detect a medium effect of this alpha 0.05. So we have now clarified this in the method section, in the page number this and line number this. Okay, so that way you know where the change has been made. Okay, so sometimes you feel that reviewers have not given the proper comments. So 2 things we can do: either appeal or just move on, submit it to a different journal. Okay, so you have to make a decision. Most of the times, yes, we move on. We don't bother much about appealing it. But yeah, some authors do write an email to the editor and giving a strong justification of what the reviewers have commented does not, they don't agree with the same. Okay, so that way also. But again, when you are writing a claim also, please be calm, concise, evidence based, and it should not be argumentative. Okay, otherwise best thing is move on, take the feedback of whatever the reviewers have given, modify your articles, and then you can submit it to another journal. So we have to always learn from our rejections. Do not be disheartened by the rejections. So embrace the reviewers' comments. Thoroughly revise your manuscript based on the feedback, and it's usually better to have a detailed submission log history. So where you have submitted, what comments you have got. Sometimes we have submitted articles to at least 5 to 6 journals before it has been accepted. It is not that once you submit, it gets accepted, because generally we target high impact or higher indexing journals. Usually they give us a good feedback, because it's something like a free thing, which you get feedback from renowned people in the field. I mean, without making much effort. So usually our submissions for the first time would be in a very high impact journal. Get the feedback. We would, if the article gets accepted, well and good. But if it does not get accepted, we can always take the comments of the reviewers, modify the article, and then resubmit it to another journal. Okay, so that way every time we are rejected, we climb one step higher. Okay, so that way we have to take the rejections. So don't be disheartened. Always take it positively. So here rejections are not the end of your research story. It's just a part of the journey to making it a stronger and more publishable. So be patient and modify your manuscript and resubmit it to another. So ethical considerations, some things which you have to keep in mind is the authorship criteria. You have to know who bears the authorships and who would stand in what position. Okay, so that can be sometimes decided before the study is performed. Plagiarism is something which we have to take care of, even if it is from any other study or self-plagiarism also. Always rephrase or paraphrase it and then write your content. And data sharing also, we have to have transparency of that, where your raw data would be. And preprints. Now there is a lot of thing about preprints, so we should know the pros and cons of the preprints also. So quickly I can just go mention the authors only who have made substantial contribution, okay, for drafting or revising or final approval, or who takes the complete accountability of the study. Okay, just collecting data, securing funds, supervising is not sufficient for authorship. People who have given sufficient contributions but do not meet the authorship criteria, you can mention them in the acknowledgement section. Okay, so authorship criteria has to be decided during or before the research process. And only people who have made substantial contribution should be mentioned as authors. Generally, plagiarism, do not copy from anywhere. Just paraphrase and write. And journals have now plagiarism detection software, so they can easily detect the plagiarism. Less than 15% is usually, we have to keep it less than 15%. So data sharing. Again, we can have it in various repositories. Open platforms are also there, like Figshare. And it's a best practice to make your data available, and so that there will be transparency. And preprints and that's pros and cons. So it is good sometimes because there's a rapid dissemination of your results. We can disseminate our results earlier and get early feedback, but sometimes some of the journals do not accept this preprint, and we have to know that preprints are not peer reviewed. Okay, so that is something which we have to be aware of. So ethics and misconduct should be avoided when you're doing a research work. So finally, cultivate your idea, create a narrative, navigate the landscape, and maximize your impact. So you have to go through all this process when you're publishing your research work. So with this, I would end my presentation here. If any questions?
Thank you, ma'am, for such an insightful and helpful session. The house is open to questions. Anyone? Raise your hand and unmute yourself.
वो ईयर क्लब्स होते हैं ना जहाँ से छोड़ा है कुछ नहीं
I want to ask any question.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I just wanted to congratulate Dr. Akila for that very engaging talk. It was really good, eye-opener for a few things which I myself didn't know, despite having publications. So it's a very good thing.
पता नहीं कि अगर आवाज आ जाए तो मेरे को किस या
Thank
फिर
you very much, ma'am.
ये क्या ये इसका नेट अच्छा होता है
The chairpersons are requested to please give opening remarks. Others, please mute your mics. Chairpersons.
Hello, ma'am. I have doubt. In short studies, we will get ethical committee waived. Which type
Can
of
you
study
repeat?
we can apply? In which type of studies we can apply for ethical committee waiving, that we don't have to acquire the IRB certificate?
Okay, if for generally for all human studies, ethical committee approval has to be taken. Okay, it's not just studies where you have you're collecting the blood samples or anything. Even if it's a questionnaire based study, generally ethical committee approval has to be taken because if you are I mean subjecting a person to any questionnaire, because the time spent of that subject on writing the question or answering to that is also an important factor. So that is why ethical committee approval has to be taken for all human subjects. If you're doing any cell line based studies, then ethical committee approval would not be required.
So if you are doing a study like that, the quality control, we also have to take the IRB.
Quality control, suppose if you are using the patient's data there, if it is a QC material, what you're using, then it can be taken, a waiver can be taken. But if it is a patient data, what you're using there, then it has to be, ethical committee approval has to be taken.
Body fluids, urine samples 5, 1 for ACR and 4 for osmolality. Then sample rejection name, instrument company name, mobile register maintained, turnover can maintain, special parameters 14 samples 28 tests. That is iron profile 3, vitamin B12 3, folic acid 3, calcium 1, P65, OS 1, PSA 1, PTH 1, beta HCG 1. Then sample critical values 1. So that is 32 years of Indian patient admitted emergency ward. Urea 257 and creatinine 23.7. It's a case of CKD. Informed by Sharon to sister Neha and the class of the audit for 5, 8, 10, 25. Within acceptable limits.
I think there are no more questions.
Hello.
Coma patient studies. Hello.
1,122 tests.
Hello.
Hello. Is it possible to ask others to mute the mic, because we can't make out if they're asking,
Yes, ma'am.
speaking to the speaker, or
Yes,
we
ma'am. Yes,
can't make
ma'am.
out really.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so
I
much.
request all other members to mute their mics. Ma'am, I request ma'am to see the chat and answer the question.
50 samples to 100 reduce usually. Urine samples, body fluids 1, sugar fluid
Yes, Dr. Akila, ma'am. Please see the chat and possible.
compared with the you are handling the first topic of the 5 point having that one. We go to Patron from later in started. Immediately are running.
There, we do have a question.
Hello. Hello. The house is open to questions. Any other questions from anyone? The chairpersons, Dr. K. Mehta, Anita ma'am, are requested to please.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Akila Prashant.
Hello.
The query from my side. Ma'am, am I audible to you?
Yeah.
Ma'am, is sample size calculation for TAT determination, turnaround time determination, as we collect the data from trials?
Yeah, depends upon your objective, what objective you're looking for in that. Like suppose if you're looking for some intervention, and then whether your TAT has changed after that
We want to
intervention, something, or in general you just want to list out the sample.
Okay.
If you just want to list out your TAT for various parameters, for that you can just specify the duration of your study. Like for example, you have taken a 6-month data from your lab, and then you're measuring your TAT level. So that way probably you can mention the duration there rather than the sample size. So in that duration, how many testing you have received for each of these parameters. That way you can write give a justification.
Okay. Just we need to mention the duration.
Yeah, so whether it's a 1-year data or a 6 months data, so that way you can mention it in that aspect.
And for this, do we need to have ethical clearance, ma'am?
As I told you, if it is
Getting-
you're using a patient information there, or if you're taking anonymized data from the hospital, you have to take a waiver from the ethical.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. The chairperson is requested to please give any concluding remarks. Dr. K.M. Lodha, sir, and Dr. Sangeeta, ma'am.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, good morning, ma'am. I'm Dr. Sangeeta Khalia, Associate Professor at SPMC Medical College, Jaipur.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the very enlightening session. It was a very, very important topic because research is important, but equally important is how to write a manuscript and then how to publish in a good quality journal. And you very wonderfully highlighted some very important points which seem very not trivial, but are very important while writing a manuscript. And I definitely think that the young researchers, the students who are the participants in the session would have definitely been enlightened, and they would have definitely got some very important key takeaway points when they write their manuscripts. So I would really like to thank you for this wonderful session, because it's a well said thought that when your experiment is poor, you cannot mask it by a brilliant writing, but poor writing can definitely mask a brilliant experiment or a brilliant work. So writing is very, very important, and I thank you very much for this wonderful session, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akila, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Now I request Dr. Anita Devanathan, ma'am, Honorary Secretary MB, to discuss about current MB functioning. Anita, ma'am, please join.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm very thankful to Dr. Anita Devnath ma'am for supporting us and helping us in every way in organizing these kinds of CMEs. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Anita, ma'am. Can you see my slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 1 second. I'm speaking as a honorary secretary to the association, and I've been asked to talk about the functioning of AMBI. The AMBI, as you already know, stands for Association of Medical Biochemists of India, for which all of us are members. And there is a lot more to just that name. There is, it's basically a idea that was born way back in somewhere around 32 years back. So all this information I have gathered from this particular book called Genesis, which was distributed during the Raichur conference. And this was drafted and compiled by Dr. V. Govindraju, who is the head of headquarters, which is based at Bangalore. And that is the address for the headquarters. And that is the official email ID for the association. And this is what is mentioned when we make any kind of communication also. So now coming to the history, as I said, this idea, AMBI as an idea, as a group of medical biochemists, this was born in the institute that is Madras Medical College and in the biochemistry department. This was initially visualized by Dr. Gopalakrishnan, who was then the HOD of biochemistry at Madras Medical College, now known as Chennai. And later on, he went on to become the dean of the same college, and later, after superannuation at Stanley Medical College, both at Chennai. He felt that biochemistry is a vibrant subject learned at the bedside, which is equal to clinical medicine. So the very fact that we feel very closer to the clinical medicine is because we are actually learning what's happening within that person. So this is what he had told way back, and that is what we are even still today, we are actually going ahead with. And he entrusted this responsibility to his student, Dr. V. Govindraju, who was then in the government service in Karnataka. Now, this responsibility, Dr. Govindraju took it up single-handedly with determination, and slowly a one-man army had support from the entire faculty of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. The idea taking shape had very senior members of the faculty from all over the country. From Andhra Pradesh, we had Dr. C. Sita Devi, Dr. B. Sadashivadu, Dr. N.S. Das. From Odisha, we had Dr. N.C. Panda. From West Bengal, Dr. C.R. Meti. From Pune, we had Dr. Y.V. Sharma, and from Haryana, Dr. Sayani. So these were the founder members or the pillars, along with Dr. Shanti Naidu, who was also one of the members for the association's growth. The first meeting was held at a beautiful resort at Bangalore in 1991, and the first conference was held at IMA Hall at Bangalore, where the association was christened in 1992. All this information I have gathered from the message given by Dr. Shanti Naidu ma'am in that book, that is Genesis, Present Future of AMBI. Now, coming to how does this particular association work? It functions in a democratic way. That is, it abides by certain rules and regulations that forms the constitution of the association, which is known as the bylaws of the association, which was distributed during the conference, that is in the Raichur conference, which was only one of the conferences which was in the hybrid mode. Elections for the central office bearers are conducted every year at the time of the annual national conference. And similarly, state chapters choose their office bearers in their state conference. As per the resolutions which were passed in the general body meeting held during during these annual conferences, what was decided in 1993, we would be doing correspondence with the National Medical Council, which was known as MCI at that time, to safeguard the interests of the fraternity of medical biochemists. Secondly, introducing fellowship awards in AMBI on par with other recognized national and international associations. This had started from 1996. This was passed in a general body in 1995. And that was a general of AMBI. It has been written AMBU by mistake. That was a typing error. And newsletter was initiated in 1995. And then CME programs were to be organized by different state chapters regularly. So these were few resolutions that were taken in the general body meeting. This is a website which will tell you all about the various office bearers on the left side. And you get a whole lot of this one advertisement right in the middle over here. Like, for example, I've got the 31st annual conference. This was the last year. This year's also there will be in the website. And you have a login ID here, which is very important because if you have created your login ID, then you will have access to newsletters. You'll have access to all the webinars, that is at AMBI Academics, which we have got all over the country where people are giving talks. That will be available in this through this login ID. So only for the members who can log in, this particular facility is available. Besides that, on the right side of the website, you get IFCC announcements where you'll have study proposals or for any kind of surveys or any task force or being correspondence members. All these things will be put up on the right side. This is basically dedicated to all these IFCC or international affiliations. So this is something which is important. So it would be ideal, at least once a week or once in 10 days, it would be good to go to the website, visit the website, have a look at what announcements are there. Are there any webinars? If yes, then how do I attend, register for it? All these things will be helpful because these are knowledge which you can even, if during webinars, you can even do other work plus listen to it. So that is what most of us do. So this is something which will be very useful. If you have the time to sit before a computer and jot down notes, that will be great. That is the ideal way. But most of us here do it while doing something else. But that's something that webinars are really helpful because it is knowledge at the end of the day, whether it is being reinstated, reincorporated into our daily schedule, whatever ideas and concepts that have been told during those webinars are really useful. So next thing is, this is the executive body. This is the current executive body. All right. This is also available on the website on the left side. Now we have got this on the right side. What you see on my screen, you have IJMB, which is a flagship journal of association. And you just now heard Akila speak about how to write. And this is one of the places where you can publish. We are indexed in DOAJ. With everybody's support, I'm sure we're going to, and with Akila's leadership, I'm sure we will be flying really high with this. And on the left side, what you see is the AMBI newsletter, which was reinstated again. We had released 2 letters. And all of that the newsletter basically emphasizes whatever activities that are taking place in our or across our country with various state chapters, which are held under the aegis of AMBI. So it would be ideal to do this because this will give you that support. This will also give you that visibility and also makes you feel proud when you see your work is being published, your effort having organized something as a CME or whatever will help you to kind of boost your morale as well as boost your CV, and it can be utilized by yourself for your promotional activities or anything that for that matter. So this is something which you can utilize, and please make sure that you send a copy of a small report, a copy of a brochure, as well as a couple of photographs, important photographs, which will indicate that it is from a CME and not from a place where you have taken just because the background is nice. So please make sure that this particular opportunity is utilized. Now, we have international affiliations also. We have got affiliation with IFCC, this affiliation, and also with APFCP. IFCC, I think all of you know, International Federation of Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine. And APFCP stands for Asia Pacific Federation of Clinical Biochemistry and Laboratory Medicine. These recognitions enable the association to offer its members a wide platform of exposure and widen the interaction for better learning and understanding. So you can get nominated depending upon your achievements, depending upon your CV and credibility. You can get nominated as corresponding members in various task forces, and you can get represented in young scientist group also, scientific group also. For a few of our members have already been awarded fellowships, travel fellowships to various international conferences under these international affiliation. This is the bylaws of ANBI. Okay, so if you write to the headquarters with a self-addressed envelope, we can send you a hard copy of your the bylaws for the association if you're interested. And I would prefer that the state representatives or the state chapters to actually write to the headquarters to procure a copy so that you'll have a copy to refer to whenever it is required. So this is about the functioning of ANBI. So I would like to I'm ready to take questions if there are any.
Raise your hands and unmute yourself for any questions. I think there are no questions. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing ideas and functioning. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now we proceed further with our next session